Hi, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 4 of the Yacht Report podcast. So we're going to move on to our main topic now, which is, like I said, douchebags in the industry. I love the word douchebag; it makes me laugh. Now, what you've got to think about is the landscape of the super yacht industry. There are a few different people, and there are different. There's a pecking order, right? Like a hierarchy, like in the military. So you've got the crew. You know, I'm a member of the crew. Within the crew, you've got different ranks, of course, and then you've got the captain at the top of the chain, and then you have the management company that the owners use to effectively run these vessels. You know, there's a lot of employing and purchases and flights and food and provisions and fuel and all this stuff, and the owner's not going to do it himself. Some owners have like a company, owner's representative that does all of this stuff for them, but very often they use a management company. So you have all the people that work in the management company. Then you have, obviously, there's an owner of that management company. Then you've got obviously the owner of the vessel himself, the owner's family, and then you've got brokers. Now, if a yacht is being sold, then they're using a broker to buy or sell the yacht, right? So these are all the people that you've got. Obviously, there's more people than that. You've got contractors, you've got engineers, you've got people like yacht builders and stuff like that. But the ones I'm focusing on are the ones that I've just mentioned: crew members, owners, family of owners, yacht management companies, and brokers. Because these are the people that I would come in contact with. For the most part, the only time you come into contact with, like people who are building and stuff is when you're on a new build, if it's being built. And I want to preface it with a phrase I heard once, which I think is an excellent phrase, and it says that if you meet a person in the morning, and he's being an asshole, he's being a douchebag, then you probably met an a-hole, right? If you meet an a-hole 3-4 times a day and every day, then probably you're the a-hole, right? So you got to bear that one in mind. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because over the years, I have met quite a few people who have, obviously opinions vary, but there are people that I've met over the years who have proven themselves beyond the shadow of a doubt to be a douchebag. And, in the hierarchy of working on a vessel, you have to learn how to deal with those people, right? And sometimes it's out of your hands. And I've actually lost jobs because of people, because of things that have happened, that I've had no control over once they've happened. I've not only have I lost jobs that I've actually had, but I've also been prevented from getting a new job because of that same person, right? So now the best way is I can tell you the story. So I was working on a yacht. Interestingly, the previous story I was just talking about, I said I was in Rendsburg in Germany. This was the same vessel that I was on. We had the way it works basically is we were in a big refit over a year, and we had a massive budget. My budget alone was over $3 million. There was a lot of stuff being done to this vessel. It recently been purchased, so it was having massive overhaul, changes in the interior, decor, engineering, electronics, audio-visual, IT, bridge equipment, everything. It was huge. I think the final bill was over $50 million. And as a result of that, you have a lot of people trying to sell you things. You have a lot of work with the management companies as well. Now, I'm not going to mention any of the names. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to have any lawyers' letters and stuff like that. But we had the management company that we had. the owner of the management company who was writing a lot of messages. What he would do is he would write an email to the owner's representative, as I mentioned before. In this particular instance, the owner's rep was a family member of the owner, but he would write them an email, copy us in on it, and he would be talking about things that he was trying to sell them stuff, basically. And he was quite focused on something that he doesn't even have. He doesn't even sell. It's not even part of his company. So he's a management company. He's looking after. He's looking after all of the things like like buying stuff, buying provisions under normal circumstances. That they're controlling or they're taking care of like flights for crew, provisions. When we buy stuff for equipment and stuff like that, it will go through the management company, and they get like a small, they get percentages and stuff like that. So they charge each month for the services. But in this particular instance, he was trying to sell us a package for internet, which is not even something that it's not even his business. It was somebody else's business. But obviously he's got some sort of business agreement with them, right? So he's trying to sell this product on their behalf, and obviously he's probably getting some sort of payment from them. But we were already under contract with a different company. So so we were just ignoring it because it's quite tricky, He's sending messages to the owner's rep, who happens to be a family member of the owner, and we are, there's a pecking order there, and obviously the owner's rep is already high, but is a family member, so he's very high. Then you've got the owner of this company, who's kind of seen on a different level. For this guy who's a member of the family, he sees him as more of an equal than he sees us, because we're just the crew, right? We're just the crew. So we have to sort of deal with it. We have to be careful how we deal with it. But so we're ignoring it for a while. But it's really he really keeps going, really keeps wanting to sell this product. And in the end, I wrote back to him and I said, look, why you keep going on about this? It's nothing to do with. It's not something that we're looking to replace right now. We already have a contract with another company, and just knock it off, So anyway, the owner's rep, who's the family member, he kind of loses his stuff, and starts immediately emailing us saying that, why are you not trying to get a better deal? And this guy says he can get us a better deal and all stuff. But we're already right in the middle of it. We had a 24-month contract, and we were like 4 months into this contract. So there's no way you can get out of that contract. But this guy's just it's just pushing it all the time. And in the email, I've said, obviously, I wrote back to the owner's rep, not to him. And I said, clearly this person's got some sort of a financial agreement, but, because he keeps pushing it, but, we're not in the market for this thing. So, obviously, eventually, somehow, the owner's rep has sent it to him. He's seen what I've written. And that's the start of this vendetta. That I've said that he's getting some financial kickback from pushing this service that he doesn't even sell. Now, the owner's rep sends me quite a nasty letter, in actual fact. And initially, he actually fires me in this letter, and says that he wants to get rid of me, and I'm not going to repeat the language that we used in it, because it was probably the most disgusting email I've ever had. So immediately, the captain and the other management people see this, and they're freaking out, because we're right in the middle of this refit, right? And I've got this huge ongoing refit going on, and I'm saying, right, well, I'm out of here then. And they're like, no. So they kind of fix it all, and they get the owner's rep to calm down, and then he accepts that I can stay, and blah blah blah. But now that it's the seed is set now, and I'm thinking, well, I'm out of here. So it's just a case of being smart about it. I'll find myself another job, and then I'll just go on leave, hand in my notice, and then that's it. So I start to look for another job, and I go at this point in time, we were in Bremen, and so I travel back up to Rendsburg where we'd been earlier, and I go up there and I have an interview for a job, and I had my car with me. I had a little mini Cooper S Mini, the BMW type, that sporty one. So I drive all the way up to Rendsburg. It's a good old drive. I don't remember exactly how long it was, 4 or 5 hours, maybe longer. So we'll go up there, stay with a friend of mine, and I go for an interview. And then it's a brand new boat that's coming out of the shipyard quite soon. I go on board, meet everyone, meet the chief, show me around the boat and all that stuff. So they offered me the job, right? Straight right there and then. So when can you start? I thought, oh, great. I was just finished. I just finished my rotation from the other boat, and so I was on leave. So I had 2 months off. So I thought, this is perfect. You can go start a new job, see what it's like, and if you don't like it, you go back to the other job. They're none the wiser, and that's it, right? So perfect. So I said, yeah, I can start. I said, I just need to take my car home because this boat's going to leave. It's getting ready to leave the shipyard and go to sea. So I said, I just need to take my car back to the UK, and then I'll come back over and I'll start. So I said, give me a week. And they said, okay, no problem. So I left. Now I drive to Holland, to Netherlands, and I'm getting a ferry home from the Netherlands. So I just arrive at the port, and my phone rings, and it's the CEO of this management company from my other boat, right? So he leaves a message. So he asked me to call him. I thought, that's weird. I've never spoken to him. Like, he's got my personal phone number, and he's phoning me up. So I thought, that's weird. So I phone him up. I say, yeah, what can I do for you? He says, I just wanted to say, if you don't get that job, then it's got nothing to do with me, right? I was like, well, first of all, what job are you talking about? And secondly, how has it not got anything to do? Why would it have anything to do with you in the first place? So he's like, well, I'm just saying, like, it had nothing to do with me. So he was very cagey, obviously, hangs up the phone. And I'm thinking, so what I've discovered now is that this new vessel that I went to interview for is managed by the same company that manages the vessel that I'm working for. So you can see what's happened here already. I'm sure you can. This guy has obviously almost got me fired from job one. I go to this other place, I interview, they offer me the job, and then he phones me up and says, if you don't get it, it's got nothing to do with me. But a strange comment to say. It's a bit like this lawsuit here saying that there's no allegations that Karimov purchased the vessel with illegal proceeds, even though they say he doesn't own the vessel. Like, it's a weird argument to make, isn't it? Like, why would you say illegal proceeds if you don't own it? Anyway, so a few days. So I'm supposed to be starting this job a week later, right? Don't hear anything. So I email the boat. I hear nothing. So I email the captain and I say, what's happening? And the captain comes back and says, well, we never offered you the job. I said, well, that's not true. I said, I was offered the job. I was told, asked when can I start? And I said, I'd start next week. And the captain's like, well, no, I don't think so. I don't think the chief engineer would offer a job without talking to me and blah, blah, blah. So basically the job offer was withdrawn, right? So clearly this douchebag guy who's in charge of this company has said stuff that has prevented me from getting that job, right? So they've withdrawn the offer of the job. So I lost that job because of this same person. So yeah, so I ended up going back to the other boat until the vessel finished in the shipyard, and I thought, I don't want to be on board when this person comes on board, after the way he spoke to me. So I eventually I found another job, and I left that. But I had to be careful, and now I've got this douchebag who's now, like, every job I apply for, I have to check which management company the yacht's with. And, if it's with this same yacht management company, then I can't apply because and it was quite a big management company as well. They managed a lot of yachts. So yeah, it was, just because I said something in an email. I've got a lot of these stories, by the way, because there are a lot of douchebags in the industry. So yeah, it was quite something to have this situation. And this guy, he couldn't, he had this power because he was the manager of this company, and he just thought, well, I'm just going to make it impossible for this guy to get another job in the industry because he said something about me that I didn't like. So now, interestingly, a few years later, that job on that boat came up again. Now at this now fast forward a few years, I'm in Monaco, and I hear from this guy who's got me a job in the past, and he just out of the blue emails me, "Oh, I've got this job. Um, you might be interested in it." And he says the name of the boat, and I thought, well, that's the same boat that I almost went to work on. Hopefully the management company is different. Anyway, I start talking to him, and he's like, yeah, oh, great. We'll put you forward for it and all that. I'll say, okay, great. So then I met up with him because I was in Monaco. I met up with him, had a drink with him, and he says, okay. So then a few days later, or a week later, I've heard nothing from this guy. I email him like, what's going on? Heard anything back? Oh no, he didn't, unfortunately, because he was like almost certain. He was like, oh yeah, you're perfect for this job, and then it was like, oh no. And then he doesn't want to email me back, and I realize it's the same issue. So twice now, I've not got this job because of this douchebag. So he just kept going on and on. Every time I tried to get a job, this douchebag blocked it. So yeah, it was really really, and there was nothing I could do. I even spoke to this guy. I went to see him. He crapped himself when he found out I was in Monaco because that's where his office was based. And I went to see him, and I spoke to him, and I thought, usually when you speak to someone like that, man to man, you can resolve those differences. But what he did is basically he was polite to me when I was in front of him, and he was like, okay, well, yeah, well, give me your CV, and I'll make sure, we'll find you something. And then probably sent out my CV and said, make sure he never gets a job in this company, because I never ever did, but it turned out to not be a problem anyway. But what a diva this guy was. And one of the things I wanted to say about this, if the owner's rep is listening, and he'll know who he is, I've spoken to him since actually. One of the things that he never realized is that he had this idea that he's high up here, and we're just low down here because we're crew, right? And this other guy, this yacht management guy, is up there with him, right, somewhere, probably below him in his eyes, but he's higher. But what they don't realize is that when we work for a vessel, we are advocates for that vessel. We see the vessel as our vessel, right? So when we have to go and buy equipment, for instance, let's say we're in a foreign country somewhere, foreign to where we normally are. We're not in a shipyard, but we need to buy some products. Then when we go out, we will buy it, and we'll try and get the best deal for the boat, even though the owner's got lots of money, right? We're still advocating for the owner. A little story about that is I went out one time. We were in Thailand. This is a completely different vessel. Went out. I had to buy some iPhones. The owner was renowned for breaking his phone, so we used to keep a few iPhones in the safe, and then if he needed a new phone quickly, he would. I don't know what he was doing with them, but they would come back bent, screen smashed, all kinds of stuff. I had to rebuild them and replace them and stuff like that many times. So we have like a backup of iPhones, keep them in the safe. And I went to this mall in Thailand, and there was a little shop there selling iPhones. So I'll go up, and I'm with a deckhand, and I go up, and the guy said, I said, how much are these iPhones? This was back when it was the iPhone 5S was the phone at the time. I was like, how much is the phone? And he was saying the amount of the cost of the phone. And I was like, well, I need 3 phones. So what's for 3? What do you do for 3 phones? And he gave me a price. And I was like, well, how about this price? And I was bartering with the guy, right? And the deckhand was just looking at me with this puzzled look on his face. And after I got the deal done, I got the phones, we're walking away. He says, why were you doing that? Why were you bartering? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, it's not your money. Like you had the money to buy the phones. Like, why not just buy the phones? And I said, well, I'm advocating for the owner. You know, if the owner was here, in actual fact, if the owner was there, he probably would have just paid, right? he's not going to waste his time bartering on the cost of 3 iPhones. But to me, I knew the guy was asking more than they were worth, and I'm not going to let him get one over on me, right? But I'm at the same time, I'm advocating for the owner. And so we're always trying to get the best deal. Now, when that yacht that I was working on, when I had the $3 million budget, I saved the owner through my contacts in the industry and through getting a better system for the yacht, a big upgraded system. I saved the owner $1 million on that. My predecessor, who was working on the vessel right up until the vessel was just about to go into the shipyard, so he was preparing who was going to come and do this upgrade on board, and he left, and I came in to replace him, and I had all this stuff this work that had been done, pre-done, and it was with companies that I didn't know, I didn't like, and I knew companies that could do it better for less money, and I brought in that company, and I was able to, like I said, put in a better system for a lot less money, and you know, so the deal was done. I brought in these great companies, same companies that Abramovich had build his boats, so they were very good companies, but still much less expensive than these other, you know, new companies that were they were the favorites at that moment in time. But the good companies who were the most experienced and stuff, we brought those guys in, and they did a fantastic job, and they saved them $1 million. Now, $1 million is a lot of money, even to a billionaire, right? So, you know, like I said, always advocating for the owner, and any experienced crew member working in the industry at that level is going to do the same thing, right? They're not going to just say, well, in actual fact, somebody just popped into my head that used to do that, actually. But for the most part, people will generally say, I'm going to get the best deal for the boat, because it's like, it's almost like a professional pride as well. It's like, I'm not just going to pay whatever, because it's not my money. But I suppose there are some people like that. But in that particular instance, no, we always advocate for the owner, and the owners need to know that, you know, that they can trust us to do those things. Now, like I said, there are and other douchebags that we've come into contact with, brokers. One particular we've spoken to quite a lot, even very recently with our channel and stuff like that. And whenever they send us an email, they're so rude. And we had dealings with them from last year. We were actually doing research for another YouTuber, very famous YouTuber. Maybe I'll do a video about this one day. But we were doing research because they were in our industry, in the yachting industry, and it was another YouTuber. They wanted to do some video about super yachts, and they asked us to do some research. They wanted to pick some vessels out to use in their video, and so we had to contact a lot of brokers. Brokers don't only sell boats, but they also do chartering as well. So if somebody's got a charter, if I've got a yacht and I'm chartering it, I'll go to a broker like Yachts for Sale, David Seal. He's a broker, right? So he might broker. I don't know whether actually. I think he just does buying and selling, but his company will have people who charter, and they, like, if I want to charter my yacht, I hire his company and they charter out my vessel, right? So now on the other side of that, if I want to charter a vessel, I contact David's company and say I want to charter a boat, and they'll put me in touch with the person who's in charge of that. So that's what we were doing. We were contacting a lot of brokers for the potential charter of yachts, and we're talking like big yachts. We were looking at chartering on behalf of this company, and everybody was super cool, super nice, super helpful, except one company. And the guy who kept contacting me, like we were in line to get a small, like whenever there's a vessel is chartered, the brokers get a commission, right? So they get, I don't know what it is, let's say 10% or 5%. I think it's 5%. And we were saying, well, because we're going to bring you this custom, we we'll get a referral amount. And all of the companies that we spoke to, they all said yes. That's not a problem. Except for this one company, the guy starts saying, "Well, are you a yacht broker? Let me see your yacht broker's ID." Total douchebag. And he just didn't want to even enter. So here's me potentially bringing them a customer for one of the biggest yachts that was on their books. And he was arguing about whether or not we should get 2% tip, or not a tip, but a broker's fee or whatever. So again, yeah. And this same company that sent us emails in the last few months as well, because we did some stories and we got some information incorrect in the story. We probably mentioned it on the channel. And the way that these brokers wrote to us, absolute douchebags. So I'd love to be able to name all these people. It would be so much fun. But yeah, it's not worth it. Now, when you're working on a yacht, you can have a douchebag working on board, and they can have an effect depending on their position in relation to you. They can have an effect on you that is negative for the whole vessel. We had somebody on board a yacht I worked on years ago now, over 10 years ago, and she was a purser. She wasn't particularly, that's not particularly a high rank. It's management, but it's so you've got sort of three branches. You've got engineering, you've got deck, and then you've got interior, and they are, or hotel, it would be called on a cruise ship, but it's interior. And they are generally at the top of the interior branch. But they're not, they're not a high rank in terms of the deck or the engineering departments. So they're sort of on equal par, but they've got no authority over us, let's say. But this person, the way the yacht would normally work is, if the owner wants to do something, he tells the captain, and then the captain, it filters down from the captain to everybody else, right? And that's the way it works. Nobody wants to speak back to the captain, to the owner. Nobody wants to, everybody's terrified of the owner, and the owner's word is the final word, etc. But it comes, the owner tells the captain, and it comes from the captain and filters down, and that way the captain's authority is maintained. However, on this yacht, it was different, because the owner had a personal assistant and the purser, so they worked in the same office, right? Now, in this particular instance, the personal assistant left, and the purser said, "I can do that job as well." So she took on both jobs. Now, as a result of that, she's now communication with the owner, and the owner is telling the purser slash PA, well, I want to go here, I want to go there, and then she's telling the captain. So as a result of that, it kind of like messed up the hierarchy of the boat, right? So now the purser's got this perceived power, because she's the one she's the messenger of the owner, right, to the captain. The captain's like, she's like, "Oh, the owner wants to go here." "Oh, really? Oh, okay." And it almost seems like the captain is working for the purser, right? So it messed up that hierarchy. It's a bit like when the purser, for instance, which is almost always, in my experience, a female, is dating someone. Let's say the purser, or let's say a stewardess or someone, is dating the captain or dating the chief engineer. Now they've got this perceived power, right? By proxy, they've got a proxy power, because now they're dating. If you say something to this person, they can go and tell their boyfriend, who's just happens to be the chief or the captain, and now your life's misery, right? So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that same situation, that she's got that position of power, right? So as a result of that, now the captain's a little bit nervous about what he says to her, right? Because she's in direct contact with the owner, and she's got delusions of grandeur, right? She thinks she doesn't want to be in uniform anymore. She thinks she's a manager. She wants to have an office on the shore, and she wants to be all this stuff. You know, she's got very high expectations for herself, and amazingly, she's so good at manipulating. She even manages to manipulate the owner for a while, and convince and the owner. But the owner's saying, "Why do I need you in an office on shore? I need you on the boat, right? You're the purser." But she manages to convince him, whether or not she did convince him or not, whether he decided to just let her put a noose around their own neck. But she eventually hired another person to come on and be the purser, so she could sit in this office shoreside and then just pop on board every now and then in her own clothes and stuff. And once they hired this new person to do her old job, he fired her. So, you know, she manipulated everyone for a while, and then she got fired. So she actually talked herself right out of her own job eventually. But the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because, like I said, you can have a person in a certain position who makes everybody's life a misery because they've got this they're in this situation now where they've got this perceived power, and everybody's scared, walking on eggshells, kind of thing. So you know, it was that particular instance was a really bad instance. And after she left, they changed the system on board that yacht, and they said, right, in future, the owner will speak directly to the captain. Now, what if the douchebag is the captain or the chief officer or the chief engineer? You know, I've been in all of those situations. I've been in also, like when she left. When that woman left, I was just talking about, it was like VE day on board. You know, it's like people were cheering, sailors were kissing women, and you know, all that stuff. So, and then, but in other instances, there's been no VE day. You know, there's just been like a prolonged situation where you're working with people that you don't like, and the only solution is to leave. Right now, what if your boss is the douchebag and you want to leave, but you're in this situation, right, where you can't get a good reference because your boss is the douchebag, right? So you kind of feel like you're stuck. Now, I recently had somebody write to me, and the person was telling me a similar kind of story, and she was stuck on this boat. She couldn't get a reference. She couldn't get another job. They were treating her very poorly, underpaying her, giving her very short contracts. And I said, look, you don't need it. I mean, obviously, ideally, it's great to have a good reference from your current employer when you're getting a job. But what you can do is there are ways around it. This is the final topic, if you like, is about if you're stuck on a boat and you want to leave and you can't get a reference, how do you get around it? And I just said to her, it's very simple. What you do is, I'm sure you've got good references from your previous job. She said, yes. I said, what you do is you apply for a job. When they ask you for references, you tell them that your current employment does not know that you're looking for another job. So you can't give them a reference from the current employer, because if they find out she's looking for another job, they'll fire her, which is sometimes it does happen. Yeah. So you say, but I can give you the previous job employment reference, and that is usually good for most boats. You know, I've got jobs before with they've not even asked for my references. So, you know, but you know, obviously you want to have those in place. So you can. That's the best way to do it. You just tell people that you know you're not able to give them the current job because they won't be very happy if they find out you're looking for another job. But you can give them the previous one, or I can give you somebody who knows me, who's worked with me before, etc. And that way, that's usually good enough. So that's a great way to get out of that situation and find yourself another job. And I told her to this person, she was very happy about that. Hopefully she did that, because it is sometimes, it does feel like you're kind of in prison if you can't find a way off that boat. So yeah, so a lot of stuff there. We've gone around. We sort of went from you know, this lawsuit for Amadea, which is ongoing. And it's interesting how this is all in the story, at least that I was telling, it's kind of tied together. You know, Amadea was in Rendsburg. I was in Rendsburg at that time. the story that I was, in actual fact, when I sat down to think about what I was going to talk about in this episode, the douchebag topic was the first thing that came up with. And then when this story came, when these emails came about Amadea, I was like, well, that's interesting, because this is actually the time period I'm thinking about. Is this yacht Amadea was being built at the time when all of this other stuff with me was going on. So it's quite interesting how things are connected. The super yacht industry is a very small industry. I mean, it's big and small at the same time, you know, kind of like the planet. It's like people say, oh, it's a small world, isn't it? It's a big world, but it seems small, right? Well, the industry is like that. It's kind of very small. This is another thing about all of these lawsuits and all of this stuff about these companies and lawyers contacting us and saying, you know, this person says he doesn't own this boat. But what they forget is, you know, when you've worked in this industry for over 20 years, you know pretty much, you don't know everybody, but you know, it's like that 6 degrees of separation. It's like that, but it's probably 3 degrees of separation in the super yacht industry. Like, I will know someone who knows someone who worked on that boat, right? And the information is all over, you know, it's flying around. So you get to hear an awful lot that is considered to be from within the industry, right? And that's probably why some people took a particular dislike to what we were doing with the channel when all of that stuff kicked off in March of 2022, because we are insiders in the industry, you know. So we were able to talk about these subjects in a way that outsiders would not be able to, because of the information that we have. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope you enjoyed this video, this podcast. I say video, but if you're watching it on YouTube, it's a video. If you're listening to it on Spotify or on Audible or on what's the other one, Apple Podcasts, then you're listening to it as a podcast. If you want to watch it, go over to the YouTube channel at Yacht Report Podcast. And if you're on YouTube but you feel like you might want to listen to this when you drive to work in the car, you can go and download it from the other Spotify and stuff like that, which is audio only from the last video. The first few videos we put on to Spotify were video as well, but we're only doing audio there now. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up from this beautiful location here. I don't know whether you can hear all the birds in the background. They've got wood pigeons and all kinds of other birds making a racket. I kind of hope it's picked up by the camera, by the mic, but I hope it isn't at the same time, if you know what I mean, because it can be quite annoying if you're just listening to it and you can just hear these random birds. But when you're here, it's such a beautiful place to be, because you can't hear any traffic, you can't hear anything. There's no aircraft flying over. All you can hear is birds singing and the occasional child screaming because he's been dragged out of the pool. Anyway, guys, like I said, thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you've got anything to add. If maybe you're in the industry too, you might have a story like this. If you have any ideas for future podcasts, if there's a subject that you want to talk about, please let us know. You can put it in the comments section on the YouTube channel, or you can even write to us if you want, and ask in the emails there. You can write to us at info@esysman.co.uk and just say just put the subject idea for future podcasts or something like that. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Oh, by the way, I hope you enjoyed that I've got my orange jumpsuit on again. This is I had some comments about this last time because they said it looked like I was filming from a prison because I'm wearing orange, and apparently in the US they wear orange, but it does not say prisoner on the back, so I am definitely not incarcerated anywhere. All right, guys, thanks for listening. If you're still here, you get 20 points. All right, guys, catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.